This episode of the Lead Machine Growth Show is brought to you by Lead Machine, the step-by-step tech-easy system for getting leads online. Are you ready to start attracting your ideal audience right away? Join the 5-day Lead Magnet Magic Challenge today at www.getleadmachine.com/magic. Say goodbye forever to struggling with lead magnets and say hello to getting your offers seen by your ideal clients. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyon, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. Have you ever wondered how you can get more eyeballs on your offers and your lead magnets? Today, we're going to be discussing boosting and leveraging your authority as a podcast guest. We're going to learn how to update your social profiles, distribute podcast interviews, which I'm particularly interested in that as a host as well as a guest, and create authority boosting content to get more leads. So welcome again to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where passion meets entrepreneurship and dreams become reality. I'm Paul Guyon, your Lead Machine coach, host, and international best-selling author and tech and marketing nut. And I'm dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, coaches, and solo entrepreneurs tackle their tech, master their message, and design their dream. So are you ready to unleash your full potential and achieve those extraordinary results we're chasing? Then you're in the right place. So we'll dive deep into strategies, insights, and stories of trailblazers who've overcome the obstacles of technology, marketing, and mindset, and are making a huge impact on their audiences and customers. So buckle up and get ready for an exhilarating ride filled with inspiration, motivation, and practical advice. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. So our guest today, we're going to be sharing her thoughts on how to update your social profiles and website that will boost authority and open up more opportunities, which I know that you're all interested in. I'm certainly interested in that. How to publish and distribute your podcast guest interviews to increase visibility and leads. 2 steps of the podcast, hint, hint, podcast guest leverage system. And how to leverage the episodes to create authority boosting content without overwhelm. So let me just cover some of the highlights of 𝗵𝗫 Phillips, our guest today. She's the CEO of Smooth Sailing Growth and Smooth Business Podcasting. That's a nautical theme there. You must be a boater.
I'm not, but
but smooth sailing is a metaphor for smooth sailing through the content marketing and podcast domain, if you will. She's the host of the Leverage Your Podcast show and creator of the podcast Leverage System. She's been featured on MSN, NBC, and Fox, published in Huffington Post, Daily Business Post, and go solo guesting on podcasts like John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire, wow, and Joe Fairless's best podcast ever. And she shared her expertise at events at Jim Palmer's Dream Business Academy, Podfest, and I'm going to ask you about this, included in the Guinness World Records. What's that?
So Podfest had they were going into the Guinness World Records with their Podfest virtual conference for the most amount of people that were attending. And so I was a guest speaker, so I got to be involved in that. It was kind of cool.
Wow. Okay. She loves helping entrepreneurs building their authority and increase their visibility through the power of podcasting with her full service podcasting and content marketing services. And I know I've been following 𝗵𝗫 for a while. I've actually taken some of her training, and I think she's awesome. And I'm really so excited to have you here today. Let's welcome 𝗵𝗫 Phillips.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Nice to finally meet you.
Down.
Woo!
Yes. Yeah. So thanks again for coming. how can we showcase ourselves better as a guest expert? I know you teach a lot about podcast hosting, and
Mhm.
that's a lot of but part of that is guesting, and you teach people the guesting part of it too. And my clients and my listeners are maybe they're not quite ready to be a podcast host,
Right.
but they certainly want that visibility. And I know this is a really good way of doing it. So tell us about becoming a go-to authority as a guest.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of people will guest on a podcast, but they almost rely on the host to kind of push out that exposure and the visibility. But you
Mm-hmm.
actually have control as well as to how that is being disseminated or how you're leveraging it. And I'll give a couple of examples. So let's say your LinkedIn profile, for example. In your image that you have there, you can even put like guest expert on. And let's say one of the really, if you were on a high profile podcast, then you could just have that featured on the image, but also in your bio or your links. In that description section, you can say that you are a guest speaker, because that it doesn't count as speaking. So speaking, guest expert on podcasts, I was guest expert on 50 podcasts, whatever that may be, so that when other people or other podcast hosts are looking at your profile, they automatically see, oh, they've guested on podcasts before. So they're more likely to get invited to other opportunities when the host sees them already as a guest expert. They've been there, done that. They're comfortable on camera and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Another opportunity that is often missed just within the LinkedIn profile alone is that section called featured. So you can feature a blog post on your website, a podcast episode you were on, and it
Mm-hmm.
has like the image and it links to your website. Or you can even do like a LinkedIn article that showcases one of the shows that you were on. So again, when someone's going through your profile, they're automatically going to see that you were a guest expert on a show. They can even like listen to it, link to it. It just puts your credibility and your authority kind of like more front and center. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I hadn't thought about the featured section. Of course, you can do an article when I share an episode with one of my guests. I give them swipe files and images and some sample copy that they can use. And some of them take advantage of it, some of them don't.
Yeah.
Some are really good at it, some of them aren't. But that's a missed opportunity
Oh, huge.
if you don't. And it helps both you. It helps the show, and it helps you to gain credibility. So
Absolutely.
and I guess not taking advantage of that and not promoting where you've been, what shows you've been on is a huge mistake. But what are some of the other mistakes that entrepreneurs are
Yeah.
making guesting?
The biggest one, Paul, is not publishing those episodes on your own website. So for instance, I'm obviously on your show. So I'm going to take your show notes. Sometimes I even write my own show notes for that episode if the host doesn't have a lengthy set. And I will publish it as a blog post. I happen to put it in my podcast category. And I'll have the show notes, and I will sometimes I embed the audio, sometimes I embed the YouTube video if it's there. Link to the host site, obviously, and their iTunes and so forth. So it's great for the host because they've got backlinks.
Yeah.
But I'm showcasing, it's my content, right? It's like I'm the one that I'm talking and sharing tips or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's on my site. So people can see if they go to my site that I speak, I'm on guests, I'm an expert on this, X, Y, and Z, but they can also digest and engage in the content and the knowledge that I'm sharing. And then also I'm using that when I'm sharing the episode on social media. So I'm pushing I'm using it to push traffic to my own site. That again, I've got call to actions within that post. I've got, my affiliates or my own lead magnets, and I'll put them in there. And then, of course, on the sidebar of my posts, I have my call to actions as well. So it's just another way of leveraging that content to be able to showcase myself as an expert, but then also attract and convert leads.
Right. And so as a guest, you've got to have a funnel. You've got to think about, okay, I'm going to get traffic from this.
Yeah.
I'm going to get people visiting. So I've got to have lead magnets. I've got to have my blog set up so that I can embed that. And like we were talking before, I'm an implementer, so I want to know these little detailed steps.
Yeah.
So, and I think other people too, they don't know where to begin doing that. So when you talk about the show notes and publishing an episode, so not as a host but as a guest, what does that involve?
So you can go a few ways. Again, if the host has great show notes on their page, I will simply, take those and put them on my own. Sometimes I've used AI to run the audio and grab those show notes, or I've even simply, let's say I know the topic is about my podcast leverage system. I know what the 4 steps are. And obviously I was part of the conversation, so I remember what it is. So I can just write a summary and then bullets of things that we've covered, or things that you would take away from the episode and that you'll learn, which doesn't take that long to do, and just type that out, bullets and so forth. And then I'll obviously put information about the show I was on, links to that, my own call to action in there. Sometimes I'll even add an image of something that I'm an affiliate for that may relate. So I can kind of take advantage of some affiliate sales within there. I'll either use the image that the host shares, or I will create an image of my own if it's not quite the right size, or I create one that's branded to me, showing that I was a featured guest on like your show type thing. So again, it's my branding, but I'm showing that, hey, this person chose me as a guest expert. I was featured. And again, it just kind of like up levels your authority to say that you're a guest expert on a show. And so I'll use that image as a featured image within that blog post as well.
Okay. So let's step back a minute. When you said AI, audio, transcribe, show notes, let's talk about that for a minute. What kind of tools are you using, and how do you approach that? Because this can be time consuming to go through and listen to it. Who has time to listen to what I was already there? So you should be able to take notes while you're doing it. You're covering a topic that but there's always in there. I'm surprised when I do a transcript. I'm surprised with the quotes that were done, that were made, like or the key topics, and like we're kind of going off. And when you go off on a tangent, a lot of times there's gold in those tangents. And like, did you ever think of this? And then there's that aha moment. So what kind of tools do you use for that? What AI will read in your audio and transcribe it, and how does
that part of it work? I know, because it's still so new, right? I do have a team that they actually listen and write show notes, so I have that as well. I've been dabbling with some of the AI. Some I like, some I find it focuses on not the core of the interview. It focuses on like other extraneous stuff, or like something that was mentioned during the intro. It focuses on that. So it's like the show notes don't really work because it's focusing on the wrong things. I've used Podflow, Podsqueeze, Cast Magic, Capshow. I mean, there's so many different ones out there. Some people use the chat GTP, whatever, like natively. I don't know how they do that with audio, but, and again, like some I like, some I don't. I always edit them and like give it my voice, because sometimes they're like the language is just not something I would say. It's like, I don't know. It's just language I wouldn't use. So I always edit it, review it. You have to humanize it. You can't just copy and paste. And that's the way it is. And I'll massage it and move things around. I do love that it generates timestamps.
Yeah.
And when you put those on show notes, people can actually click that timestamp and then jump to that spot. So it's like, ooh, I want to know that nugget. So then they'll click and it fast forward to that spot in the episode. So it makes the episode a little bit more engaging. But you do have to have the audio embedded on your post in order for that to work, obviously.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, some of them will pull out quotes, but sometimes they pull out like some rando sentence and I'm like, that's not a quote. So it's kind of hit and miss. It does speed up the process of creating those content assets, but it's not the be all and end all, in my opinion.
Right. And I would agree. I use a number of tools. I do use ChatGPT quite a bit for my clients as well as for my own stuff, which is fun. I just enjoyed learning how to do that. But I use Bard. Bard will read in files. You can give Bard is Google's chat bot.
Oh, okay.
And it actually, you can give it a link to your Dropbox of your audio or maybe you have a transcript and you've already gotten a transcript.
Yeah.
So you give the Dropbox link and say it's a Word doc. It's 83,246 words. It's a Word doc, and pull out the key highlights, quotes, concepts, and here are the speakers. You prompt this, and you built into your prompt, giving it enough information so it can pull out the result that you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that won't quite work. So a chat bot is a conversation that you're having with the chat. So lately I've been using Descript.com.
Yep.
Which is really great at the transcript. I don't use it for editing videos because I use Camtasia to edit the audio and the videos and put everything together. So I don't use that part of it. But I've been, fooling around with audiograms and things like that. But the Bard is great at reading those things in, and it does an okay job of the summary. I prefer what ChatGPT will do with it, so I might use both of them. But then I'll take it, and I love Grammarly, and I do a lot of writing, and so I use Grammarly, and I fine tune it to be casual, informal audience.
Yeah,
and I can change the tone and massage it to where it sounds more like me, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't use unleash the potential of your affiliate program with publishing this episode. I wouldn't use that kind of language. I said, hey, just do this and this and that, and you're gold. So you've got to, like you said, every person I've talked to and who have I been studying and following says the same thing.
Yeah.
You got to humanize what comes out of the chat bot. So, well, thanks for that. I'm glad that I like the idea of the timestamps. I haven't been doing that because of the effort it takes to pull all that out. But now with some of the automation, I'm experimenting with Capsule right now, and it does do that.
Yeah.
But then it's a bit verbose for me, and so I'm just started playing with that. So,
yeah, it's good to try out different tools, because what someone raves about, they love this style, or some people prefer this style. So it's like, yeah, I just tried Cast Magic for the first time today. It could have been the episode, but it came out kind of weird. But it has the ability to like add more prompts. So maybe I just need to like change some of the prompts to rejig it. But it takes some finagling. It's a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, one of my guests, Denise Wakeman, who you might want to get on your show, by the way. She and Andy O'Brien founded the AI Success Club.
Ooh.
You might want to check her out. They were both guests on my podcast. But what was I going to say? Oh, the humanization part of it she was talking about.
Yeah.
And I forgot what my train of thought was. So anyways, check those people out because you might want to get them on your show. We talked about the podcast leverage system. What are the 4 steps of that system, and how can a podcast guest leverage that when, they do have control, but they don't have ultimate control? So there are some things that are in, some things that are out as far as what I can accomplish as a guest.
For sure. I mean, don't be afraid to ask for the raw video and say, hey, I'd love to make some video clips. I'd love to put it on my YouTube. I mean, really there's no, it's all benefit, right? For the host to have that content out there and promote their podcast. So don't be afraid to ask for the recording after the fact. So going to the leverage system, we already covered the first one, which is publishing it on your website. The second one is distributing for maximum exposure. So making sure that you're taking advantage of all the avenues to share. So obviously the social media platforms that you use, if you do have the video, put it up in YouTube. If you have the video and you're creating reels or video snippets, then you can, use those YouTube shorts, reels, and so forth. But even like LinkedIn, there are LinkedIn articles. You can create that newsletter that people actually subscribe to. And funnily enough, a lot of people don't think to email their list when an episode is live. I'm like, that's crazy. You're serving the audience. You're giving them, tips. And the approach that I prefer to go, instead of emailing and say, hey, I just went live on this show, take a listen, is actually share a tip or a quote or a nugget that was from that episode. And just so that they can skim it and get that little takeaway. And then it's like, hey, I also covered this, and this in the episode. Click, here and go take a listen on my show page. So you want to, the step 2 is to distribute.
Yeah. And then on all those channels, what you pointed out isn't just for your email list. It's for all of those channels. You want to tease people with what you did or what you talked about. There's a lot of things that might be in the show notes or might not be in the show notes or might not be in the description that would be of interest, or that, we talked about this little thing and we went off on the side and that was really cool when we did that. So you're going to know about that unless you have a team or unless you've really fleshed out that episode.
Yeah. And I have some clients that they have their own shows and they would prefer to only promote their podcast and their show. So they don't necessarily promote the episodes that they guested on. And I'm like, I just don't understand that. Because I'm like, hey, it's your expertise that is being showcased. And if I'm on someone's feed and I see all the time, like, oh, they were a guest on this show. Oh, they were a guest on this show. My automatic view is like, ooh, they're like hot. They're like the go-to expert on whatever that topic is. Everyone wants that person to be a guest on their show. I'm more likely to look at them because I see them as an authority and they have more credibility. So it's just kind of like that whole viewpoint that entrepreneurs and prospects have, which I think is really important and shouldn't be overlooked.
Good point. Continuing with number 3.
Number 3? For sure. So 3 and 4 kind of like tie together. The third one is to repurpose for higher visibility. So, and I'll give a couple of examples. So let's say I'm obviously on your show right now, but some of the points that I brought up in the episode, I could easily go do a 2-minute little video or a separate reel sharing that point, saying, hey, I shared this thing, whatever, on, this show, blah, 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 and like do that little video. So you're taking that pieces of that long form content and using it in other ways. And it's not like people are going to be like, didn't she share that on another podcast? It's like they don't remember. They just process the nugget that you share. You could even take the topic and create your own video about a condensed version of it, or you could write a whole blog post on the topic. So you're just using that content in different ways to create more content. Don't feel that just because you shared that one topic on this person's show that you can't use it again in other ways. And people need to see things over and over and over again. And number 4 was like multiplying it for consistent content. So it kind of goes slightly in the same vein. It's like, okay, in this episode, clearly I share, 4 steps of the podcast leverage system. I could go ahead and create a quote graphic that only shared a tip to do with, publishing your guest episodes.
Right.
So I'm taking one nugget out of it. It stands alone by itself, and I can create a quote graphic. Or I can create a social media post, even asking people like a poll. Hey, how many people guest on a podcast? What percentage of you actually publish it on your website? Do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? And then you've got your poll, or just simply asking a question about that content. So it's just another way of like pulling pieces out or twisting it to share more consumable content, and taking video. Like if you use the video, creating little video clips, creating reels, creating YouTube shorts that are 60 seconds or less. So it's just like I call them snackable bites, but like taking all those little pieces out, so that you're not killing yourself trying to figure out what the heck you're going to post next week.
And that's brilliant. The whole idea of repurposing, when you create a piece of content, and this episode is a piece of content. You should always be thinking of what are the other ways that I can use it. And a lot of times people just need those examples to say, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
I didn't think of though. There's 33 ways that I can reuse this content with, and it's only one time I appeared on the show, or only one blog post, or whatever it is. You can take and pull it and make little, like you say, snackable bites out of it to just give it more life, to give it more shelf life, because you can go, if you get a good episode and you know that people are engaging with it and they like it, you can share it again and again and again and again over time. And Denise Griffiths was one of my guests, and she was talking about when she interviewed Larry Wingett. And basically she said that Larry Wingett saved her show, because she was about to throw in the can because she wasn't getting any traction. This is a million years ago, when she first started out. But she reshares that episode every now and then, because it was so good, and it means a lot to her too, and I think her people know that too. So but it was a great interview. But you can use that, and once you create the content, it doesn't have to only live once.
No. And it's funny because last year when I first started the show, I was doing audiograms, and I wasn't really into using the video clips. And I thought to myself, and now that YouTube shorts are a bigger thing, and I'm like, I still have the video. So, and especially for my solo episodes, why don't I go back? I've got those timestamps. I've got the copy. So I'm getting my team to make the video clips of those. And again, that's like content from like a year ago, but I'm just going to pull it out and use it in a different way. Same with, I've got some episodes. Again, I'll probably do it more to the solo ones, but like, let's say I did an episode on my podcast guest leverage system. Obviously there's 4 steps. I could easily take that and now create a carousel. So now that carousels are getting more traction, I'm going to go back in the archives, find those episodes. Some of them lend itself to carousels more so than others. If you have like the 3 myths or the 5 ways you can blah, 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 or like, if you're publishing, you need these 4 things. So you just kind of have to like put your brain in a way of like, okay, what has steps? What has a number of things? So then I can easily create a carousel and then put that in LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And again, the beauty of those carousels is that last slide typically will have some sort of call to action of like opting in for, an assessment or an audit, whatever the free thing is. So don't be afraid to go back into the archives to rejig and get new content.
Right. And that's exactly how we get leads from all of this activity. It's not just from your appearance on this one show, because that's one and done. But the whole magnifying, the multiply the multiply and the repurposing of content with a call to action, and then either sending them back to a landing page or to the blog post that you wrote with the with your lead magnets in the sidebar and those things. That's how you monetize. That's how you monetize this. So how else? What other tricks or tips can you lay on us about getting leads from those interviews and that content?
Another good way is seeding. So, if again, we're talking about the podcast guest leverage system, I do have a podcast guest audit. So people can get audited. So I review everything that they do once they guest on a podcast episode and give suggestions. Like, for instance, right now, I didn't give the link. I didn't say, go get this, go do this. I'm just seeding something that I have and a process that I have that will pique someone's interest. So if you're a coach, let's say, and you're guesting on an episode, you can say, in my whatever mastermind, I taught one of my clients my 4-step something system, and she was able to do this and then do that. So you're sharing like a case study scenario of a result, but you're seeding a process that you've done, a proven result, and you're also seeding the program that you have. So if someone's listening, they're like, ooh, I'd like that result. Oh, they've got a mastermind. Let me search that up. So just by seeding it and dropping in those stories, you're able to pique that curiosity to convert a prospect.
Yeah. And I think the idea of it, I was thinking about, okay, some people it's so obvious that they're seeding and it's off-putting. So I think when you said stories, I said, okay, I wrote that down. How do you make them not off-putting? And I think you just nailed it, is by telling that you have a mastermind, and I do have a mastermind, and I teach people this. How to do lead magnets, but how do you make it so that it's not so obvious, but yet compelling?
Yeah. Even just sharing like examples. It's like, I talk about, I don't know, this thing or how to improve your messaging in my whatever mastermind. And a lot of my clients had these questions. And one of them was this. I know it's a common question. So even just setting, like, again, you're just sharing an example, a story of where that question came up, instead of just saying like, oh, I get this common question, but you're saying, oh, one of my clients in this mastermind program, when I was talking about my messaging system, this question came up over and over and over again. So I want to, share this tip with you. Obviously, I deep dive and share the full template, the swipe files, the process in my program, but I want to share this nugget of information with you here. So it's kind of like, you're getting a taste, but you can get more in my mastermind program without being salesy.
Right. Okay. I love it. So in my mastermind group, with my private coaching clients, one of them is struggling a little bit to get traction in the niche that she wants, because she's a health coach, but she specializes in a very specific autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
And so how would she find shows and hosts to approach to get on their shows?
So that's where it's like, you really have to understand your avatar. You really have to know what they're listening to. What are they searching? What are their pain points that they're looking for or coming up with? So let's say, again, some autoimmune disorder of some kind, and it affects, I don't know, hair loss. I'm just making this up, obviously.
Well, it affects sleep.
Okay, there you go.
So
it's like, so anything to do with like sleep deprivation, stress from sleep, anger issues, and like arguing like your relationships because of lack of sleep, like all of those little symptoms and pain points, someone might be searching like, oh my God, I need help with this. And so it's
Yeah.
like, think about, okay, maybe they're listening to sleep meditation podcasts. Maybe they're listening to like wellness or like morning night routines, or so thinking about those podcasts that kind of cover those things like work-life balance, so that where that topic would match that podcast, and it's you're going to that niche, if you will. So it's just really
Right.
kind of like doing a brain dump of like all of those symptoms, all of those things that your avatar is searching up. Where are they going to get help? What YouTube videos, what video shows, what podcasts would they possibly be interested in to help make their lives better?
Mhm.
And then you can, and using those keywords as well, it helps. So even if you search within iTunes or whatever app you have, you could search up, actually, even if you go to YouTube, but then there's also some apps where you can search on a more granular level. 𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗴𝗺, VURBL, and Audia. And if you put in a search, it not only just it doesn't just give you a podcast about sleep, it'll give you the podcast episodes about sleep. So then you could see, okay, what was the podcast that hosted that? Is that a fit? Like, would that make sense for me to be on their podcast? Would they be my target market? Yeah. So you can kind of like reverse engineer, kind of.
Yeah. So you said iTunes, YouTube. What was the verb? What was it? VURBL?
VURBL.
Okay.
And then the other one was Audia. Audia. I'm gonna have to search it now. AUDIA. I honestly can't remember how you spell it right now. But they are, it's almost like a mashup between a podcast player and YouTube. It like has a different search functionality.
Well, Spotify would probably have something too, wouldn't it?
I don't think you can search for, like, if you search that you need help with, I don't know, better skin, like you're going to get a podcast about skin, but you're not necessarily going to get search results that are episodes about that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's got to be other podcast directories that you can search.
Totally.
And
yeah. And you can even Google like the best podcasts about sleep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are podcasts about everything.
Yeah.
So there is no doubt that you would be able to find directories. It's like you just have to refine your searching. And then even going into like those apps like Podmatch, Guestio, PitchDB, I'm sure you can put in search functionality to find those shows that are within those guest matching apps.
Yeah, and there are guest matching services also.
Yeah.
I know Interview Connections is one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I met, I was at Jim Palmer's Dream Biz Academy, one of his first ones in Vegas. And I was like running the audio and operations there.
Awesome.
And that was when Jessica Rhodes was just starting.
Yeah.
She was booking podcasts for Jim, booking him on shows and booking guests for his show.
Yeah.
And that's where she just took off. She gave a talk that day, and it was like one of her first times out, and she was great. But yeah, she's just skyrocketed from there, and she's got that Interview Connections, and she's doing great. So there are podcasts agencies that will get you on shows, and they can match you up. Of course, there's they want to charge you a monthly fee and all that. So there's a bit of investment. So do your own research before you to get your feet wet and get started. So another question I had was, and we kind of touched on this, but what kind of topics should I have ready to go so that I can, so when I ask, when I approach a host, how can I get on that show and increase the odds of them saying yes? Obviously knowing their audience helps, but what else?
Yeah. there's a few things. One, it's a good idea, obviously, you need a one sheet where it gives the information about yourself, credibility, if you've got a book, if you've been on whatever shows, your social links, and then also topics and questions. And then I go one step further and have, some people call it a media page, some people call it a press page, but it's just like a link that has the bio about you. Click, they can open up an image, your headshot, your one sheet, and you can even showcase underneath places that you've spoken at, shows that you've guested on. Also, so when people go to your website, they'll see, ooh, they're a speaker, they're a guest on podcasts. So it kind of has that dual functionality, and it's just an easy link to give people. But when it comes to the topics and the questions, you really almost need to reverse engineer what your offer is. Like, what is your goal of your business? So if you are a coach and you have a mastermind, and then let's say the mid-tier is like a course, and then like, what are your lead magnets that lead into that funnel? And so you need to have, you can do it one of two ways. You need to have a topic that is sexy and solves a small problem. And then the natural next step would be to get that lead magnet. So you do need to have lead magnets that are a good segue between one thing and another. Like, obviously today I'm talking about my podcast leverage system, and I do have a training on that. So it just kind of is a natural next segue. So you want to think about, what your lead magnets are and how you want that customer journey to go. Now, your topics, I think they're better when they're very specific. So if you have a method, a process, a system, that's an easy topic, right? Or you could, again, like the 4 ways you can blah, blah, blah. The 3 things to avoid when you want this. So instead of like, oh, my topic is about podcast guesting, that's super vague. And it's not like, the host can't envision what the talk is about. And it's just like, man, been there, done that. Everyone's, said what they need to say. So you just be super specific, and then give the host the questions that they can ask as a guideline so that they know exactly, how the topic is structured. And plus, I don't know if this has happened to you, but, if you guest on a show and sometimes you've got like, okay, I've got 3 topics, and then there's like 7 questions that someone can ask, but they're like a mix. They kind of relate to this topic. There's one question that relates to this, and then there's some that are just like random. And so the host defaults to all those questions. So then that interview is kind of going to be this like mosh pit of all these random questions about your journey, about entrepreneurship, about mindset, about your program. So you're really not able to showcase your expertise, the tips and the giveaways, because the host is not equipped and doesn't know what to ask, doesn't know what to expect from that episode. So you really need to set that host up, and it guides the conversation that sets you up for success. And also have stories in mind that you can share to illustrate some of those points and seed your programs. So it does take a little bit of work up front, but it just makes the interview so much better.
And it makes you more effective and more engaging as a guest. And when people see that you are on these other shows, and there's some structure to what you talked about, it just makes you more. What did we say in the beginning? It amplifies your authority. Yeah. And so Lindsay set up this show just like that. She said 5 ways to leverage your podcast guest interviews and get more leads. So that's the title of this episode. And she gave me 5 questions that support that and deliver that. And I made sure I answered those questions. And I asked questions that were of interest to me. Of course, I'm the implementer. And so she's answered those questions, and she set it up just how she said those. So that an example of that, how she's done that perfectly. So well done. So we talked about how to make money with having effective call to actions, free gifts that lead into your programs. We talked about promoting your episode as a guest. We've talked about the 4-step podcast leverage system. We talked about some cool tools, which I'm going to check out when we get off of here, and some of the mistakes. And I like the idea of the LinkedIn profile and just kind of highlighting where you've been and posting and publishing on these on wherever you are active on those profiles. Obviously, you're not going to post somewhere you're not going to be active, because it's not effective. But as we wrap up, Lindsay, I'm interested in knowing what are with your final words today. What are 3 things our listeners can do to put these ideas into action and get on these shows that they're looking for, and start to amplify their authority?
Yeah, 3 quick takeaways and then easily implementable steps for them to take is, one is, you may have your one sheet already if you're guesting, I imagine. So set up that web page that has your bio, your images, topics, questions, examples of shows that you've been on, because that's just an easy visibility thing that people can go to, and it's super easy to do. The second would be to review your LinkedIn profile, but even your other social media profiles. Does it say that you are a guest expert on podcasts about XYZ? Does it share a couple of key shows that you've been on? And does it share any examples? Because that's a super easy thing to do. And the third is just making sure that you are publishing those episodes that you're guesting on. Put it on your website as a blog post, and include the video, the audio links, and create those show notes. It doesn't have to be super, super complicated. There are, just don't envision it as this big, huge, ordeal. It can be super simple.
Right. And it doesn't have to all be immediate. It helps if you promote when the host is promoting, just to get that initial spike of interest. But you can use this over and over again over time, and you can use it to amplify your authority on your website and all kinds of different places. And so you could, and don't be afraid to ask the host for the assets you need. If you want the raw video or the audio, or images. So, and also engage with the host on social media when they are sharing to so that you're exposed to their audience. Would be another tip.
Absolutely.
That could be very helpful. So thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay is offering 2 free gifts today: the podcast guest leverage system training. And you can get that at www.leverageyourpodcast.com/free. And you can access the training that steps you through the whole system. There's a fillable worksheet to implement the system. And I really like the Canva templates that you provided. I mean, I took this training preparing for this interview just to see what, and her stuff is high quality, and she follows up with email and helps you, gives you even more tips. So there's a lot of value there. And also the podcast guest audit. You can get that at www.leverageyourpodcast.com/guest audit. And this is where we're going to discover what you're doing right, maybe what you're doing wrong, so you can stay on track, get suggestions to tweak your optimizing your profiles, your opportunities, other ways to use that content, which we talked about today, and what other opportunities you might be missing. Just
right.
This might be new to you, completely new to you, and if you're listening to this, take action on both of these gifts, because if you want to amplify your authority, this is just yet another way to get people to your offers and your lead magnets.
Yeah.
And so, Lindsay, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I think we're just scratching the surface of this. We're going to maybe have to invite you back on to talk about podcast hosting and just repurposing, and we'll come up with some other things that people are looking to find out. So as we sign off, remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So put the pedal to the metal. And until the next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon. So long for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.